Police firing stun grenades at Congregants in the Vaal, south of Johannesburg, after some churches in Sebokeng flouted lockdown restrictions. A group of churches in the community refused to remain closed and went ahead with services in defiance of regulations. Meanwhile, President Cyril Ramaphosa last night concluded a meeting with interfaith leaders called to discuss the COVID-19 risk-adjusted strategy. For more on this conversation, we're joined by the South African Council of Churches General Secretary, Bishop Malusi Mpumlwana. A very good morning to you, Bishop. Thank you so much for making the time.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Your take on what happened between the police and church leaders and members yesterday in Sebokeng?
It was unfortunate, but I think let's put things in perspective. The primary thing now at this time that every South African should be focused on is how we are going to participate in the drive to drive down the coronavirus infection. It is the most pressing matter. We have taken the view that we are in a state of war, except that we don't have bombs flying around, but actually that it is worse than the bombs, because this wipes out families. Our hospitals are packed to the full and people are dying. And that is, in our view, the focus. If just a couple of days ago, we had more than 20,000 infections in a single 24-hour period, and yesterday it was more than 17,000. And I think the commitment should be everyone should do what they can to bring down that infection rate. And we can only do this if we take responsibility, not government. We take responsibility, all of us, to say, I will make sure that I do everything I can to reduce the prospect and the possibility for infection. So if we put that as a background, then we can then deal with whether it makes sense or doesn't make sense to have churches insisting on staying open where there's a prospect of infections for people. We have been told that for 2 weeks we should stay away from gatherings, including outdoor and indoor gatherings of whatever nature, including churches. And we have accepted that. But I believe that with the rate being what it is now, it's unlikely that government would even let up beyond the 2 weeks. And that is why everything should be done to make sure that we reduce the numbers of infections such that it becomes easier for normal business to carry on in the country. I think that's really where things are.
Having said that, what role can churches play to help spread the correct message regarding COVID-19 regulations? Obviously, these churches that came together yesterday, this is in an effort to voice some sort of frustration. Do you think there's a misunderstanding of the regulations?
I fully appreciate the frustration. My view is we should not even expect government to be giving regulations. It should be so perfectly clear to all of us that we do this in our family, that we keep away, we make sure that, and that's how everybody should be doing that. Try within your power as a family, as an individual. It's a way of loving. Because if my love for you is such that I will make sure that you stay alive, that's really what it should be. My love should not be the love that kills, that I love my people so much that I'll go to them regardless. I think that we should not have love that kills. Yes, there is a misunderstanding. Yes, there's poor communication. Yes, there is frustration, especially for churches that depend entirely for their revenues on weekly takings, which get disturbed if there are no gatherings. That is perfectly understandable. But also, we cannot trade our revenues and our incomes for people's lives. It is important that we recognize that people are dying in large numbers. Now, I want to ask the question, if there were bombs flying around and South Africa was being attacked and there's at war, would anybody be saying, please come to my church? Would anybody be saying, let me go to the beach and insist that courts must open beaches? All these things would not happen. It is because we are not accepting in our minds that we are in a state of war, and therefore things are so bad that if we're going to change this, it's in our hands. It's entirely in our hands how we change our social behavior. That's going to make a difference. I think that if we change now, we might be able to save Easter. But if we don't change now, you know what? We might be in the same place come Easter.
So just in talking about government's responses and how they are bringing on board churches, let's talk about the conversation with the president yesterday in terms of churches' responses to the risk-adjusted strategy.
I'm sorry, I did not attend that meeting. I might just say that someone in my family died yesterday. And I mean, it happens. I don't know how many people have died in my family and extended family. And just yesterday, one died yesterday morning. So we had to deal with that. So that's why I did not attend the meeting. So I don't have a report from that meeting. But our leaders were present there, and we will be meeting this afternoon so that we can get feedback. And so I can only say that it makes sense for me that we all see what we can contribute to bringing down the infection rate. And that should be our number one priority. And if it means changing the way we have our meetings, changing the way we do our worship, changing the way in which we do organize our lobola, changing the way in which we organize our funeral. In fact, I should say that funerals have become greater infection sites even than church worship. A lot of people are not even coming to the churches even though they are open. So I think that people should vote with their feet and make a decision. Do I go to an infection point or do I not go? Let's try to do that. I appeal everyone commit to reducing the infection rate. But I just think that even where people do break the law, which is what they did in Sebokeng yesterday, I would appeal to the police to be much more constrained in the way they approach. I think that some of it was excessive. And I think that we should not allow a situation where we create a victim mindset of people that break the law. It was breaking the law by all means. It is definitely a rebellion. But I think it's an unwise, unjustified rebellion, which I think is not going to help the focus should be bring down the infection rate in our country for all of us. It does not matter who you are and where you are. And the churches are no exception because they are also, when there are people are sick, they go to the same public services.
So the breaking of the law, as you state, was not only in the having of gatherings, which are prohibited, and the types of numbers that came through, but in the run-up to the gathering, the organizers were seen putting things together without anybody wearing masks, which indicated some sort of defiance. Was this wise?
Honestly, I didn't even see that. I'm not really seeking to speak to the specifics of the Sebokeng situation because I don't know enough about it. All I know is that I'm appealing to everyone, Sebokeng or elsewhere in the country. Please remember, our ministry is to save lives. Jesus came that we may have life and have it abundantly. Please let us all save lives. If your commitment is to save lives, that's the starting point. It doesn't matter what you do. You will do it from this point that says, I will save lives. Now, the reason we wear masks is that it's my way of loving you. I'm protecting you from the possibility that I might be a carrier of the virus and I don't know it. It is said that the virus spreads. I'm much more infectious before I show symptoms. So I might look perfectly healthy, but actually I'm a virus carrier. And that's why I must wear a mask so that the people I love who are around me do not run the risk of being infected because I have not cared to do that. And I also wear a mask to protect myself from other people. It might be airborne, it might be in the air. Some people use these shields, which are not covering the nose and the mouth. That's not good enough because you may be inhaling what is in the air because the virus is in the air in the same way that tobacco smoke would have been in the air, and you'll still smell it after a person has gone who was smoking. The virus does not smell, but it is in the air. Let us care for one another by making sure we do the right thing for everyone. The starting point is the drive to drive down the infection rate, and then we can talk about everything else beyond that.
Bishop Mpumlwana, as always, an honor having you.
Thank you very much for having me.